Welcome back to Perkins Pipes. Got this gorgeous handcrafted pipe that Caleb at the Catholic Pipe Company made for me. As you can see on the front of the bowl there, he made this for my latest book at the time of this recording, The Golden Waffle Principle, Finding Meaning in Teaching. And there's a reason to bring this pipe out for this particular discussion. And I got to say, based on just the comments that people make on the channel and so forth, I think this is one in particular that a lot of people are going to like. So as always, let's get this guy lit. Let's get to talking. So I've got one more to share with you from this biography of Alexander Pope that I've been reading. And this one is not so much about Pope himself, but about literature in general. So it's from this book, Alexander Pope, A Life by Maynard Mack. And Mack writes, the class and cultural shiftings long underway by the 1730s was to push apart the pursuits of governance and learning, strip poetry, along with humanistic studies generally, of the high public function to which poets like Spenser, Milton, Pope, and Shelley successively and vainly laid claim, and reassign all such activities, for the most part, to the quite literally private sector of the poet's and reader's interior world. Now, there is a lot to say about this. Excuse me there. A little flake of tobacco. A lot of people will complain that we don't have literature and society and so forth, Well, that's nothing new. He says as early as the 1730s, there was already a general cultural shift, as he says, to separate or push apart the pursuits of governance and learning. And right now, that statement is either going to break your heart or cause you to say, okay, what's your point? Keep listening if your reaction is the latter. If it's the former, there's hope. Okay? To strip poetry along with humanistic studies of the high public function to which other poets had laid claim, and reassign such activities to the private sector of the poet's and reader's interior world. Well, I'm with Milton, Pope, Shelley, and others. I think poetry and literature has a public function. In fact, I don't think it. I know it. I know that it does. I know that it can. And I know that our public life is the better for it when it does. And conversely, our public life is the lesser, it's the shallower, the smaller, when that is not the case. Go back to the founding fathers who knew their Greco-Roman classics. We think about the writers of the Federalist Papers adopting classical pseudonyms. There was a time when orators, preachers, politicians could quote from a shared body of knowledge, shared body of literature, poetry, history, make reference to it. And not that everybody was ever the entirety of the United States were all classical scholars. Of course, that's not the case. But there was a shared body of knowledge, and even if you didn't share that knowledge with those who were speaking, their reference to the great literature, the great poetry, the great framing of an idea, and a classical and legendary and timeless phrasings of ideas enriched everybody. Even if you didn't know the poem that was being quoted, even if you didn't know the work of literature that was being quoted, it enriched us all when public figures did that. And it conversely, as I said, it takes something away from us when we don't have that. I do not believe that poetry and literature are purely interior and private matters. They can be. There's much to be gained that way as well. But we need the decoration to our ideas. We need the form to go along with the substance. That's what make things memorable. There's a wonderful line. I don't have it here with me. I think I've referenced it before, but in Montaigne's essay on education, he quotes a Stoic philosopher named Cleanthes, actually whom Seneca, this Roman philosopher Seneca, quoted this, and then Montaigne is quoting it as well. And he says something along the lines, he says, just this sound, when compressed into the narrow channels of a trumpet, springs forth more sharply and clearly. He said, so a thought, when compressed into the measured feet of poetry, comes forth more violently and strikes me a much stiffer jolt. Well, that's true. That's true. Getting worn at this point, but the Kennedy line, that's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That chiastic arrangement of words. Why do we remember that 60 years later? Well, because it was spoken in that poetic form. So form goes with content. And it's a shame if that is not a part of our public lives. Now you say, well, so far all you're talking about is the negative, right? Where's the positive? You said that there was hope. Well, there is. And the hope is this. If you enjoy literature, if you enjoy poetry, bring it into your casual conversation. I'm not saying you have to name drop. I'm not saying you have to say, well, Shakespeare all the time. But just as we quote movie lines and song lyrics and so forth, bring that into your casual conversation. And I can tell you, I do. In fact, a little plug here, in my book, The Golden Waffle Principle, Finding Meaning in Teaching, that's part of what I do in this book. I think I say something about this. Oh yeah. I say, finally be warned that there are languages other than English in this book, most notably Latin and Greek. It's important for readers to have access to the original text of quotations, even if they do not have a command of the languages in which they are written. Perhaps they will be inspired to study those languages or to seek a friend who knows them. Even if readers do neither of these, seeing words in a language other than one's own is an important reminder that theirs is not the only language in the world, and therefore theirs is not the only way of understanding things. So, and I say I've provided English translations as well. So I'm quoting. This is an English book about education. I'm quoting Virgil, Cicero, Plato, Homer, Montaigne, many others. What I enjoy about this channel is bringing in the mix. And you've seen this, or you heard long-time followers and viewers of the channel. Talking about music and sports and family and faith and literature and poetry and philosophy and pipes, and it all goes together. It all goes together, and it should not be pushed apart. I don't believe that at all. It should be integrated. I think the well-integrated life has all of those parts moving constantly together, something of a kaleidoscope, if you will. And there's no reason that can't happen today. Yes, today, 21st century, it can happen. It does happen. I have these conversations with my friends. And we're not all just a bunch of eggheads sitting around. We laugh, we joke. Ridiculous, silly stuff. I still, at my age, I'm pulling pranks on people. But and I have friends who pull pranks on me. But the conversation will shift, and then again, something literary, something biblical comes up, and it just weaves its way, again, kind of like leaven through the loaf. It just weaves its way through our conversation. So talk to me about that. Talk to us in the comments here. Do you see literature, poetry in the public square ever? Maybe there's some places you see it and I haven't. Do you remember a time when you saw it more? Would you like to see more of it again? Would you like to see more of a literary public discourse? If the answer is yes, then I would say it begins with you, and it begins with me, with our own families and our own friends. And then, who knows, if any of us ever run for office, perhaps we'll bring that into the broader public square as well. As Malcolm Guite likes to say, I do these little things in order at last to do nothing. Or as I like to say in Latin, Parva ut tandem, nihil agam. Have a wonderful day.